nation,
indivisible,
under God,
with liberty
indivisible,
and
with
justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all.
Yeah, even if we may not have been started officially in the meeting, we were all here and publicly viewed, so we're not hurting anybody or hiding anything. We'll quickly go to public comment. Jessica, if we have people that are looking for public comment before we get into it, but we want to get right into the discussion. We have Representative Berthium here about the cables and the pole.
Can we say Donnie?
With Donnie while he's here. I would say Donnie, but you know.
I just see the representatives for National Grid that are here for the poll petition
Oh, excellent.
and the two public hearings that we have.
We need a poll here
Yep.
Yeah,
at 6.
6:30.
6:30.
Yep.
Well, we can do that first, and maybe you'll stay on and do our, have some conversation with us if they know anything about it. But why don't we go ahead and bring them in for the poll petition, and we'll go on with that. Who do we have for them, do you know?
We have Jared and Matt.
Jared and Matt, welcome. Looks like you're still mute. Oh, there you are. Welcome, Jared.
Good evening.
So your poll petition, what are you guys doing down there?
Okay, so we have a span of distribution line that goes from Vernon Ave to Barre Depot Road, kind of it's a straight shot over the hill. It's in the woods and we don't have access to it, so we're petitioning the town to relocate that line and kind of go the long way around the right-of-way. So we would come off an existing line on Vernon Ave, down Barre Depot Road, and just basically reconnect that way. So we'd be removing poles in this right-of-way and coming down Barre Depot.
All right, and has this been brought to the DPW yet and signed off by Jason?
Sandy, has this been brought down to the DPW? I think she did send it to Jason.
Yep, I sent it last week.
Thank you.
So is he confirmed and signed off on it, or that's why I always ask. I want to see it signed off by DPW to make, because they make sure that it's within our right of way and it doesn't have any issues. Last time we did this, it had many issues.
I never heard back from him.
All right. When are you guys trying to get this project started, Jared?
Right now, there is no timeline. We have a design and a cost estimate, but it has not gone to scheduling yet, so we're flexible with that.
All right.
Matt, sorry to cut you off. Would you be able to add the phone number ending with 6062 to the panelists, or so that they can speak? I think they're in listener only, but I don't know.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yep, no problem. That's Mike Conley. He's the designer on the overhead portion.
All right. Well, we just have to get the approval from the Department of Public Works because they have our road maps and they make sure that everything is all right with them, so we don't wind up in the middle of a road. Last time we did this, they were actually going to wind up within the roadway. It was a single lane road that was going to have to be widened, and where the pole was going to prohibit that. So before I recommend we even take any action on it, I'd like the DPW to look at it and give us an approval on the plans as they're drawn.
Okay.
Were these, are these only identified on a drawing, or have you been out to the field and staked the locations for each pole? Because normally Jason would go out and check your staked areas to confirm that you're far enough off the roadway.
If Mike's on the call, he can answer that. I have been to the site and I've seen them all painted and staked. There's also a second petition after this one for the underground portion. But as far as I know, they all are all staked and painted.
Okay.
Right. It just expedites it if it is, otherwise they'll get back and ask for that. We meet every 2 weeks, so we can discuss it in a 2-week interval anyways. But they can do it any day as long as it's staked.
Right.
All right, so the underground portion, we've got to come up with this, the same answer. Is that something you're presenting tonight as well, or is it another time?
It is, I think it is scheduled for either 6:45 or right after when this one ends.
Yep.
Okay, Dylan, do you have anything to add or ask about this, or?
No?
Matt, anything else?
No, for the underground portion, it's just going between two poles to get underneath the transmission lines.
Okay, and the same thing, we just make sure we confer with, I mean, I'm sure you're gonna be calling DigSafe anyways, you'll get the location of anything under there, but I'd just like to all run it all by DPW.
Okay.
So you want us to reach out to your DPW?
Yeah, it might be beneficial if you reach out in person as well. I mean, our office will let them know. But if
Okay.
you call in person, you can kind of make sure he's getting it done to get your answer. Then we're not just bringing you back in until you know it's all set. And if he has any questions, he can, direct them to you.
Okay, so you want us to reach out to him in person and then re-petition the town?
If you would, yes.
Okay.
I would suggest that, just to clarify, unless there's a significant or substantial change, it's not necessarily a repetition. We're just going to continue the existing hearing on the petition you've already submitted.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to save the paperwork and the effort, that's all I meant. I wouldn't want to get confused by what we meant by repetition.
It would just
Okay.
need to be brought up in another meeting after the DPW looks at it, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
As soon as we have the DPW sign off, we can bring it and approve it here.
Perfect.
That's all.
Okay.
What do you guys know about cable wires running on your poles? Anything?
I don't necessarily know specifics, but I do know that anyone who attaches to the poles requires a third-party license. And it
Okay.
goes through our third-party group. You can buy spots or, distance on the pole for cable per pole.
All right. And do you know, otherwise, there's another issue we have going on, that somebody has said that they're going to incur a $3,000 fee for the cable company to attach their cable to the pole because it won't take the weight. Do you have any idea what kind of guidelines there are for that, where the pole needs to be upgraded for a cable line, or? Trying to gather all the information we can about it.
Yeah, I guess I could briefly talk. From my experience, if the cable company or whoever the third party is attaching to the pole, so third party being anyone other than National Grid or Verizon, if they determine that they don't have the proper height and clearance over a roadway or just on the pole in general, they will send a kind of a bill to us to replace this pole. And I think that those prices are kind of set in stone on the basis of them being replaced. So yeah, they will ask National Grid to replace this pole on their behalf, and then those are pass-through charges that go to the customer. As far as where these costs come from, I'm not 100% sure.
So it's more likely than the weight of it than it is, it's more likely that it's just not enough height, it's a shorter, older pole, and wouldn't give them the ground
Yeah.
clearance to the wires that's
If
required.
it's not like a 40-foot pole, which is pretty much our standard size now.
I would doubt it is.
Yeah, so if it wasn't set within the last probably 20, 30 years, it's probably a 35-foot pole. And just due to simply how many people attach, or how many different companies attach on the pole now, they just need to be taller. So
that could be our issue with that pole. That's what I was wondering. All right, thank you. That's really the only question I had about that, a curiosity. And it does shed a little more light on it than just the weight of the wire, because that didn't seem to make sense.
no, I'm sure it was a height and clearance issue primarily.
All right, I appreciate it. We look forward to seeing you hopefully in a couple more weeks.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Matt. Oh, go ahead.
Is the second agenda item also a separate formal public hearing? I only asked to make sure we go through the appropriate procedures so that when we continue these items, we officially did it.
Well, both the poll petitions are items 1 and 2 for the above ground and underground. Then the third one's at High Hawk
Yeah.
Farm, host agreement.
Were they covered in the same public hearing, Jessica?
There are two different public hearings. One's scheduled for 6:45. The
Okay,
conduit.
so I would recommend that we formally open up that agenda item. We can obviously continue it to the next meeting based on deferring to DPW input, but just for the record,
Well, sure, it is a public hearing, so we'll officially open up the underground conduit public hearing now. And the recommendation will be that they confer with Department of Public Works. And when it's signed off by the Department of Public Works, then we can rehear the petition on another day.
Okay,
And the documents are outlined online, so people can view them on our website if they wish. Any other questions, guys?
I'd just make a motion that we continue both the overhead and the underground petitions from National Grid, based on our request to have DPW provide input. And we will continue this at a future hearing when DPW is able to get back to us on that.
Second.
okay.
All right, I have a motion and a second to officially announce that we'll put these off to a later date when DPW has input on them. Any further comment? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Ed Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. And now, we have a little time before High Hawk Farm, so let's get back to Donnie Berthium while he's here and have discussion about the polls. So Jessica, if we can get into some of your poll and general cable update that you have for us now, and we'll take advantage. If you want to come on up front, you're welcome to grab a chair, or if you want to,
The microphones are up on the table. So
Want me to come up
maybe-
here?
better,
Like right here?
wherever you
might be
want.
easier for people to hear.
Hi.
So as far as an update, I reached out to National Grid to ask about what it would cost and what the process looks like for adding our own cables to their poles. And our National Grid representative got back to me with some rough costs. And so there's an agreement that would need to be signed, which is about a $300 fee. And then the town would need to get a surety bond of $500,000. There's application fee and a fee per pole to survey it, survey the area to get an idea on how many poles and how much wire we would need to get everybody connected. And then there's a couple of other fees, including a rental fee per pole, which is an annual fee. So I looked up Dylan a couple months ago, let me know about this organization called Wired West. And so they have some information about how towns can go about, making their own fiber optic network. And so they do have the pole attachment process, which seems to be probably one of the more complex processes of this. And it basically lines up the same process that National Grid gave me last week. And they even said, whoever you can hire for this purpose, which I guess Westfield Gas and Electric will do for other towns. So that's an idea if we're looking to hire somebody to do this work. But I think that if this is the route that we want to go on, it's going to take a lot more research for sure.
Okay, so really have nothing for numbers for pricing. We know it's going to cost, but we have no numbers.
Yeah, nothing substantial, I should say, or exhaustive, because we really need to know how many poles that we would need first. That would be the key number to start doing some actual numbers, because the fees are gonna range based off of if we're doing 1 to 50 poles, or are we gonna do 500 poles. I don't know how many poles are in town, so I can't even begin to make it a guess.
So you're just talking adding poles to add cable to it,
Well, so if we were, so I guess this is another, scope that we need to define is, do we want to just offer this service to people who do not have cable, or do we want to create an entire network that anybody in town can access? And so those numbers will vary, because if we're talking about only people who do not have access, that's gonna be a lot fewer number of poles than if we're talking about people, or if we're talking about the entire town, we're gonna be talking about a lot more poles.
Wouldn't that cost be more than just paying to hook the rest of these people up?
Well, that's the thing. Right now, we had an estimate for, a two-year-old estimate now of about $750,000 to hook up the rest of the roads. I would think we could hire a private company to run the wire for less,
To hook up the 50?
to hook up to what's left. But, so we need to compare that $750,000 to what it would cost us. If we paid the fees and did the rental and hired a third party that's licensed and bonded, what would it cost to have it done? Because we don't have to get the bond, the company that does it's gonna have to be bonded. And anyone that's doing that work probably already
So,
is.
you could reach out to Hardwood, Jessica, they got an MBI, they got a broadband grant a few years ago.
Okay,
They signed a contract with Charter and it wired most of the town to the percentage I think you guys are at. You're like 98, I think, or 90, high 90s.
it's high nineties.
Yeah.
Mid-nineties.
And I can't remember what their total cost was, but it was substantial. It was more than
It was
$750,000.
millions, because they did the whole town,
Yeah.
because they wired the whole town.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, we're talking about that last 10%, but that, I believe we have in the ballpark of, is it 90 or 100 miles? I don't remember the exact number of miles of road in town.
Yeah.
But the majority of it has cable, but these last few that don't, that last percentage still entails a few miles of roads, because they're, often-
Teresa was, you know her, Teresa?
Yeah.
She would have all that info.
Okay.
She was on, they had a little subcommittee, I met with them a few times, and she would have that. Actually went to a few meetings with them with Comcast, or Charter they had meetings at UMass, in the student center in the basement. There was a lot of arguing around the table, but they got what they wanted, so.
It's a challenge, that's for sure.
Yeah, they're not easy to deal with.
Well, and I look at the basic, if they have 2,500 customers in town, and they average $100 a customer,
Yeah, they're doing all right.
that's $250,000 on a monthly basis.
So you
I
guys
mean,
couldn't get,
there's a lot of money they're getting from this town, so to expect them to extend, the network a little bit, granted, they're just looking at the numbers, it doesn't pay out as well as the rest of it, but if you look at it as this town's given us so many $1 million of business a year, why not finish it? But our cable committee doesn't feel like they can make that presentation, that it won't be received.
well, you already put some money away, right? Did you?
100,000.
100,000.
Yeah.
And I talked to Peter at Mass Broadband, and you guys couldn't get a grant because you're 90, what do you say?
Yeah, our percentage is just a little bit
Too high.
Just under 99. But he did say that you guys are also serviced by, well, what else did he say? A couple of wireless ones. And there's no Fios coming out here?
No.
So Fios is only to Worcester, and they're done with that? What they're doing now is 5G. I talked to somebody from Verizon. So the cell towers, then they have these repeater things they put on telephone poles, that, I don't know, amplifies it. So
Right now,
that's what they're trying to do, get 5G, and it's kind of coming this way, but I think everything will be wireless pretty soon.
Right now, we originally talked about 5G, and there's a lot of articles and things out there about health concerns with 5G
Yeah.
and not knowing. And I think we agreed, I don't know if we did an official moratorium, Matt, or if we just agreed we wouldn't use 5G in town yet until there's more information on it.
I think we generally agreed to try to pursue alternatives versus 5G
Before the
because
5G?
the unknowns.
Before the 5G, other stuff first?
Right. We just-
Anything that doesn't reach that level of wireless capability that has shown some evidence, and there are scientists around the world that agree it's bad for the environment, bad for the animals, and could be bad for human health. So
It's a
we
pretty
didn't want
potent-
to throw that at our town until we had better information.
Okay. Two other ones are Viasat and Hughes.net. They're both satellite internet providers.
I've heard of.
And they service Barre.
Right. Some people have had the satellite and they say
I don't
it's
know
it's very, very slow and it's not,
Is it?
you know, it's relying upon like the satellite TV. You get a heavy rainstorm, you lose your satellite, so. I had DirecTV and things before, and anytime you had a really heavy storm pass through the west, it cuts out
Peter
for
also
long
said, I'll
periods.
send you his info because he has info on hotspots and all this stuff. And he's more than happy to help you with that. So I'll send
The
you.
biggest issue, Donnie, is we've heard reports from residents where they're using HughesNet or they're using others currently, and it's unreliable.
Yeah.
And it also doesn't work for every property. If you happen to have a house like I do, I've got too many trees on my south side, I can't get a signal through the trees. I would have to put a satellite dish across the street somewhere in my open field
Yep.
in order to get it, and then I still gotta run hundreds of feet of cable to get back to my house.
And drape it over the road to boot.
Well, exactly, so at that
Go on,
point,
but-
it's not worth it. I might as well pay cable to wire me directly.
Yeah. Are you not
And
wired,
so-
Matt?
No, I'm on a major road, so I have cable, so I'm doing well. It's just, we did look at other options when we first moved in, and we just came to learn that we couldn't rely on anything except cable.
Okay.
And there are, you know, certainly a number of people that don't have cable access, but one of the things we've been talking about is development of the town and trying to, you know, you want to grow housing, you want to grow business and other things. And when we lack the cables, we have huge areas of undeveloped land, but
Yeah.
nobody's got interest in developing because we can't offer them something as simple as cable.
Did you try to go through Spectrum? They have that formula in there for wiring houses, and so in the contract is that, well, I think it's 30 houses per mile they'll do. And then in there's a formula, if it's less than 30 houses per mile, it's a cost estimate formula, and I mean, a couple of numbers they have to plug in, but it might be worthwhile.
These
to
are
find
very
out.
sparse. These are a house a mile or so. I mean, they're,
But still, so on a road, if they're gonna run a line, it has, you know, distance divided by the house and then cost estimates. It'd be nice to know just exactly how much. But
well, supposedly that's what they do, and they came up with their $750,000 costs is to run the
Yes,
rest
so-
of these roads so it's available to everybody.
So I would ask them
And
to
then
see
they-
that. I would wanna see that.
Then they'd have to, do you have that? Did they send us that document of the cost per road?
You should ask them.
We had a cost per road at some point.
Okay, I don't have it, I haven't done any deep searching for it.
We'll have to
but-
reach out to Andrew and see what he's done with that, because they gave us, I believe they did that, it was cost per road, wasn't it, for certain roads we had left?
Yeah, but at the time, they only gave us like 4 or 5 roads, the estimates. And since then, I think Jessica's
Identified.
found out that we have almost 10 roads, or at least sections of 10 roads that aren't covered, so we've got a lot more that, I would almost suggest what we should do is just restart that. It's an old estimate anyway, 2-3 years. I would suggest just take the information Jessica has, ask Spectrum to provide the estimate, and reference the contract formula that Donnie mentioned, and just start fresh. And that does 2 things. One is it gets Spectrum back at the table, and we can really start getting into this and figuring out what we can do.
I know some of the people up on Jewett Road, they're closer to the Hardwick side, to get cable from Hardwick, and I said, well, we're not locked in, they don't have a monopoly, they can certainly get it from that side, but there's no poles on that side either. So they're looking either,
Yeah, the signal can come from wherever. You
Right.
just get charged by your town.
and I don't know how easy it is for us to bury wires, and we could talk to Jason, when we're missing these, could we bury and put an underground conduit and run wires and drop the whole pole issue?
So I can tell you when they did Hardwick and some of the houses that were further off the road, they did underground. And they put the wire without conduit 4 inches into the ground because it's cable. You don't have to put it in conduit, so.
Right.
And, you know, and it's relatively cheap and quick. So when they tell you they gotta add poles of conduit, they did a bunch in Hardwick like that.
And that's what I'm wondering, if we could run underground for long spans, and then there'd be a fee for Charter to attach to a pole to come above ground to string to the house, because most of the houses have
It
electricity.
just depends on the wire and how long, because if it goes too far, you either need one of those booster things.
Yeah, you might have to put some heads up above ground, and, but those are
They
things
have
we
like-
could do.
They have like 3/4-inch coax.
Right.
Big stuff for long distances too, so.
But I would think we would have the ability to, especially if they don't have to be buried deep for the cable, we could run long stretches underground, in or out of conduit. Out is cheaper and quicker, but then it's harder to find breaks. And if we needed to have, you know, a cement platform where it comes up to an above-ground head for a wire access or amplifiers, those things I would think we could set up, and maybe, you know, Charter can't because they can't dig down our road and lay pipes without permits and everything from us. But we could, and we haven't really thought about that possibility yet. And then when it goes a length, when it comes to someone's property, we come up above ground, you know, up and down. Charter pays the fee to attach to the pole, and that's the attachment fee the customer's gonna have.
So I have a really good friend, he works for Phoenix Communications, and that's what they do, they set up those loops. He has a bunch around Boston. I can ask him kind of for a ballpark and see.
That'd be great,
You know, what it
'cause
would be to run fiber around here.
I think that's what Groton said they'd use was Phoenix they hired, because
Yeah,
they own,
Phoenix.
they own the poles, but they paid someone to run all the cable,
Yeah.
the fiber optic through town.
And then I would do what you said, Matt, is try to get another concrete number from them with the new houses, just so you know exactly what it is. But I would get a breakdown too, just to make sure, you know, their numbers are consistent. Because they were pretty inconsistent with, when they were running the lines in Hardwick, different houses, they were charging different amounts, and we had to get involved a bunch of times. And I mean, it all got worked out, but it was kind of a pain, so.
I know they give a set distance from the road for a house, 100 or 150 feet. It's no charge to the customer. Then when it gets to be more, or they need
But
a
it,
pole,
but there were
that's,
different numbers for different.
For similar
ones.
setups?
Yeah, it didn't make any much sense, so, we got it all worked out.
7 o'clock.
It's 7 o'clock, so we're gonna break off for our next unit. If you wanna hang out for a little bit, we'll
You
get
got
back to
more
it again.
questions?
Well, do we have more questions, or should we let them run away on us here? We got them in.
I'm good for now.
You guys can
I
just.
don't have any questions at the moment.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
can talk to
You guys got my
Phoenix.
cell phone, or whatever, just text me or call me anytime you need it.
Now, does Phoenix only run fiber optic, or they run
Fiber,
cable
they
too?
only do fiber.
They only do fiber, so that would be one way to look, but that's a problem. It's only fiber. We'd have to do everything. And then we have,
You call them and ask them how much we're paying that will be to see.
you see, because I'm curious, I don't know what the pole fees are, and then, because
Yeah.
once we run it, then someone's got to pick it up, and if it's only in Worcester, you know?
All right?
Well, thank you
Just
very
let me
much, sir.
Thank you.
Let me know,
Be in
text me,
touch.
whatever you need.
Yeah.
All right, see you guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Donnie.
Thank you.
All right, we have them here from High Hawk.
How are you tonight?
Good, how you doing, Chris?
Good.
So here we are, our second public hearing, which would be our final.
Yeah, great.
And what did we leave off on last time? We didn't ask for changes, right? We didn't have any
I
changes. We
think
asked.
it was just waiting for a second public hearing to officially
Right.
close it.
And that will be tonight. Do we have anybody online that has any comment or input for the hearing for High Hawk Farm to get a manufacturing license for
And
their
then,
existing facility?
if anyone is here for the public hearing, if you could just raise your hand using the feature on Zoom.
And what is it, *6 for someone who's calling into the telephone?
I think that's a mute, unmute.
Oh, mute, unmute.
Yeah, I'm not.
I don't know how they raise their hand via phone.
So we have nothing coming up? And Just the 3 attendees, all right. Gentlemen, Matt, Dylan, any questions, concerns, conversation you want to start about this?
No, I guess I would put it out there, just, I don't think the board has finalized any licensing and fee schedule beyond growing licenses. I'm only bringing it up because I do believe the board should review that to see if different types of marijuana establishments would fall under a different license category. I think our general bylaw may call out different categories, but I don't think we set any fee schedule. So I'm only bringing it up so that our applicant here would know that it might be something that the board's going to consider down the road. I don't see myself necessarily being here by the time you get to a level you want to make that decision. You know, I've only got one meeting left right now in this term. So I'm just bringing it up. It may be something that you and Dylan may want to consider. And I only bring it up so that our applicant knows it may be something as part of the process.
Right, and I believe that the CPCs, the CPC license does include manufacturing up at their facility. And I don't think we did any difference in the fee for that, other than the one host agreement. I don't think we held any other fee, but we did let them know that the fees may come down the road, and they agreed to those, I believe.
Yep.
And that's how we left it. So other than calling that out to Chris, that, yeah, the fees could come in the future as the bylaws call for, and we have to conform with the bylaws. As of now, we don't have any different fee. And this, this host agreement is just a really, is this actually spelled that's replacing the other host agreement, or is this just an addition to?
This new host community agreement is just amended that allows us to do manufacturing, which is what I need to submit to the CCC for their approval.
Okay.
We got a ways to go before I come back for you for the actual license.
Right.
And we can, whatever the fees are at that point in time, we'll have that discussion and take care of
If
it.
we have them. Well, I'm satisfied. If you guys are, we can move forward if somebody makes a motion, or if you have any other questions, now would be the time.
I'd make a motion that we approve the host community agreement as amended and submitted by High Hawk Farm.
And
I will second that motion.
I have a motion to second to approve the High Hawk Farm host agreement. I'd ask that maybe we modify that motion a little further to authorize me to sign this agreement on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. Because that's what we know that
I
the
would
state's looking
second
for.
that amendment to the original motion.
Okay. So we have a motion and second to both approve and for me to sign the host agreement. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes?
Dylan Clark, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Thank you, Chris. I'll get this signed. It should be available from Jessica this week at some point, and sure she'll reach out and let you know when.
All right, sounds great.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Have a good one. Thank you.
All right, new business, request to use town property for Making Opportunities Count, MOC. What do we have there, Jessica?
MOC typically approaches the board when they want to do their story walks. So they've done a handful of these, at least in the time that I've been here. They've already done a couple. I believe that they're just an organization that if anybody knows differently, you can correct me, but I think they read stories to children, and it's kind of like an interactive experience for the kids and families.
It looks like they have two dates picked up, May 6th and June 17th.
Yeah, one is for Mother's Day, one is for Father's Day.
I was gonna say, it looks like it's gotta be around Mother's Day and Father's Day without knowing the dates. Yeah, they've typically done this on holidays as well. I think they've done it at Christmas, and I think they've done it on Halloween at time. Yep. So. And any questions, guys?
I have none.
Anyone have
Nope, looks pretty straightforward to me.
everyone have a motion for it then?
I make a motion, we approve the request to use town property for making opportunity count. May 6th and June 17th, 2021.
Thank you.
I second that.
Motion is second to use town property May 6th and June 17th for making opportunities count. Any further discussion? Have we ever done, Matt, do we usually do something with a fee on this, or don't we? Is this, do they
Honestly,
charge for this
I don't
event?
recall.
I don't think they
I recall
charge.
Previously, you know, it was done in tandem with other events. Like it would occur at the same time we were doing the Very Scary Halloween, or it occur at the same time we're doing a Christmas in Barry. I don't recall any discussion about waiving fees for this. I have no problem if we want to at least identify it as the nonprofit level. I don't know. I don't recall if they identify themselves as nonprofit or not, but I have no problem waiving the fee either, because I understand the intent here, and I also understand the potential impact to the town financially is minimal to zero.
That's why I'm asking, so I don't know if you guys, we'll go ahead and end that discussion and vote on this, so we can make a motion on the fees after the fact. So I'll call for vote. All those in favor of approving this request?
Matt Urban, yes?
Dylan Clark, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. And I would entertain a motion for the fees, and that's why I was indicating it's for the good of the town, it's for the kids, and it's, you know, really community-oriented, so.
I'd make a motion that we waive the fees for the request to use town property, specifically the areas around North Common, due to the fact that there's no expected impact or cost to the town to allow this to occur.
Second.
Motion is second to waive the fees for this specific use of town property. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Thank you, gentlemen. Personnel Committee's appointment wage authorizations for the Administrative Assessor Rachel Carney.
Do you want me to, I'll go grab them.
Would you grab them, and you can go through that when you get back in. So they've, the assessor board, appointed board, has selected a candidate, and we're ready to bring her in this evening and appoint. Anything you want to tell us and fill us in, process, what you've done, what we've got?
Yeah, so the Board of Assessors and I interviewed a panel of, I want to say we interviewed 5 candidates, 4 different candidates. All have really impressive experience in the assessing field. And we decided that, you know, it's a unanimous decision to bring Rachel onto the team. Just, I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, but I feel, you know, her energy, not only does her experience in knowledge of assessing will really help the town of Barre, but I just think that her energy, her attitude will be a really great asset for us as a team of employees. I think that she'll be a really great partner with us, so.
Okay.
Yeah, she really impressed us. She seems to have all the skills that we really require in a town like Barre. She's got a background in Warren, which is, you know, one of those you do it all yourself offices, very much like us. So it's not like a city office where you have one specialist who does this and one specialist who does that and another specialist. It's a good general experience.
Okay. Gentlemen, have anything else to add or say? Or you don't have to, I'm just saying if you want to, this is your chance.
It was unanimous, as Jessica has said. The
All right.
interviews were over, and you could see the excitement on everyone's face, and everyone stated the same name. So that was delightful.
Matt or Dylan, any questions or comments?
No. Unanimous recommendation. It's a unanimous recommendation as far as I'm concerned.
Very good. Rachel, anything you want to say before we move forward?
I'm very excited to come on board here.
All right, excellent. Look for a motion then, gentlemen.
Make a motion that we accept the recommendation to hire Rachel, my apologies, just a sec.
Carney.
Carney, thank you, as the new administrative assessor.
Second that motion.
Motion is second to appoint Rachel as a new administrative assessor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the work, everyone.
Thanks, good,
I'll be
thank
in
you.
touch with you soon with the new hard. Okay, that's out. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, next we'll discuss the Conservation Commission.
Yes, so.
We've had a bit go on,
Right,
unfortunately, in some aspects of this, but.
right. Where do you guys want to start?
Well, I'll start with a synopsis for folks. That we received correspondence from the Conservation Commission with the concern of their ability to perform their role for the town of Barre because one of the members, because of personal reasons or illness, can't fulfill the duties right now and hasn't in over a year. So they're left with 4 members to vote, needing 3 for a quorum or for passing a vote. They've asked that we move the associate member to full-time position and move the full member to the associate position, at which point this board decided that we would advertise and see if there's any other interest in it. There was unfortunately quite a bit of talk about this on public media and on Facebook with partial truths and discussions about what's going on and what's happening. I heard things about that no one's resigned. I've heard comments from our town moderator that, well, someone's elected, we can't remove them from the position. Unfortunately, we made it very clear in advance to this discussion last week that this is an appointed position, appointed solely by the Board of Selectmen. And as we have the power to appoint, we have the power to remove. In this case, we have someone who has got exemplary service to the town of Barre. He's done tremendous amount of things for this town and been involved in the town in many ways over the years, much longer than I've been here. However, being unable to perform the duties of the role that he's agreed to do, I feel that we have the need to remove him from that position and appoint someone to that full-time position. And that's what I assume we're going to do this evening, and I'll now defer to Dylan or Matt, whoever would like to go first, and have your comments.
I'll go first real quick. I think you summarize it appropriately, and I agree with you, Greg, about the powers the board has to appoint as well as to remove from a position depending on the situation, and then replace them with another individual. I also agree that this individual has spent decades helping the town, and so yes, due respect and appreciation for all the time they put in. So this is not a reprimand, disciplinary, negative thought on the individual. It was just trying to make sure we can provide enough people to the board, the commission, Conservation Commission, to meet quorum as they need to when they have to have meetings. And apparently that was part of the letter that was sent to us, is they were having difficulty maintaining quorum. 2 other things I'd like to just throw out there is, one, I have, if anybody's asking, I've spoken to a couple members of the Conservation Commission since the last meeting, as well as I spoke directly to the individual that is having difficulty attending in the last year or so. So nothing I'm saying is being said without having input from others. I'm not just making this up. The individual is completely fine with the idea of not staying on this commission for the foreseeable future. If I'm correct, this term was going to end in on June 30th this year anyway. I understand that we do have 3-year terms or something similar to that with this, but even an interim fill-in would only go as long as the original term, which means it would end on June 30th, 2021. And because of that, if this individual is feeling better and able to participate and things make it easier because certain COVID limitations relax, he can apply again then, and the board can consider at that time if they want to reappoint him back to the commission. And he's very comfortable with that possibility. He knows it may not happen, but he also knows if he could, he would love to do it again. So I just wanted to put some of that out there. I did speak to them, and I do feel like the board's not acting against the wishes of the individual that is currently unable to continue as a member of the Conservation Commission at this time.
Thank you. Dylan, do you have anything to add or comment on?
Well, I appreciate both of your explanations very much. So thank you, gentlemen, for those. Yeah, I mean, you both went over all that I feel as well, in addition to some new things that I didn't know. So thank you, Matt, about some of that recon there. But you know, this isn't a disciplinary issue, nothing personal. And if there are interested parties that are ready, willing, and able to sit in that seat, even if it's only until the end of June, then we should hear the candidates for those and see what they have to say. We shouldn't have a seat sit empty unnecessarily, and ultimately it is our board's decision who sits in those seats. So I think we should at least listen to or have a conversation with anyone who's interested in that Conservation Commission seat.
Thank you.
Before we
Just to touch on it once again, you know, this was a request brought to us by the committee because they were lacking in the ability to make meetings and make their quorum. And it in no way reflects on this individual's service to the town. And once again, we would be so lucky to have a dozen people of this person's caliber helping out in town on things, because he's done so much for the town over the years. And I do hope he can get back on this committee in the future. But for the time being, I think the right thing is to go ahead and appoint someone to that position in his stead for the remainder of that term until June. And with that, we'll go to Jessica and see what we have for applicants.
So before this meeting was posted, I had only received one letter of interest, and that was from Tony Mobilio. But since then, I also received a letter of interest last night from Lucas Roddy. And I forwarded that to everybody, but I'll just read off his letter of interest right now. So he is, well, his experience that he believes would be helpful in this position is that he was the vice chair of the Templeton Board of Health for 4 years, so he has some experience working on a board or committee. For 5 years, he has been a Massachusetts licensed soil evaluator, which allows him to determine soil types, groundwater elevations, and the presence of hydric soils, which is most often used for testing site suitability for septic systems. And for over 10 years, he has been an excavation contractor and business owner who is familiar with blueprints, site plans, and other documents that are brought before the Conservation Commission. That is his experience, and if I could just find Tony's experience really quick. So Tony expressed interest on serving on the Conservation Commission. He looks like he has education in environmental studies and has been very passionate on issues related to the environment. He's also served on the Scenic Byways Committee, and so he's the other individual who expressed interest.
Okay, and what was the name of the associate member they originally requested we step up to the?
Frank LaRange.
And he didn't reach out and apply for this?
I didn't receive anything.
Okay. My comment, guys, would be, my initial reaction was, if we have an associate member that wants to step up to the full-time seat, that's a way to go with it. Given they are already associate and they have a term on it, and this seat does end in June, and given the fact that Tony does other things with the town already as other boards, I'm very interested in, as they say, having new blood in the game here. And if we have somebody new that sounds like they're pretty well qualified, what better time to have them in a 4-month interim, 3-month interim to see how they do. And personally, I'd consider probably the new applicant. Dylan?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a good sign when someone steps up to express interest in a municipal function, so that reflects favorably on Mr. Roddy for sure.
Matt?
I think it would be good. I mean, not knowing what we're going to do with the next appointment on our agenda today, but I know Tony has also applied for that. And I know where I'm at with that. I'm probably going to support him on that one. And because of that, I think it would be good to continue to add new blood. And if Luke is interested, it would be good to bring him in. One other thing I'd put out there is when you have a 5-member board and an alternate or associate, and you're having difficulty getting quorum so you can vote, that associate or alternate is part of the number of people that we're having a hard time meeting. Because at any point you get below quorum, the associate shows up, they make quorum. So I'm not sure moving his associate up would have resolved the problem anyway, is all I'm saying.
Right, I believe most of our charges, we make sure they're written that way, that the associate fills in any given meeting, so I agree. So I would look for, I would think first we need to make an official motion to vacate the seat and take action on that, and then we could look for a motion to appoint.
Make a motion that we respectfully remove Kurt Wells from the position of Conservation Commission member for the completion of this term, which ends June 30th, 2021.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is second to remove Mr. Wells from the position for the remainder of this term, as we discussed. Do we have any further discussion on that? So I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. And now a motion to appoint, I don't have the name in front of me,
Lucas Roddy.
Lucas Roddy.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we appoint Lucas Roddy to the Conservation Commission until the end of the term, June 30th, 2021.
And I'll second
Just
that.
because of prior business relationship with them, I don't want to take any active vote on this.
Fair enough, I'll second that motion. Have a motion to second. Do we have any further discussion on the appointment? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan,
Matt
yes.
Urban abstain.
And Matt Urban abstained. Thank you, gentlemen. Next, we're up to the
Thank you.
planning board alternate.
Yes, so I believe within the first week or two of February, Ralph Rogers let everybody know that he was moving out of town, so he would no longer be able to serve as the planning board alternate. After which, the select board opened a search for a new candidate and also acknowledged that you guys would entertain Tony Mobilio as a candidate, as he was the other individual who expressed interest in the alternate seat back at the beginning of the fiscal year. And since then, I had heard no other interest other than Tony, and he was very enthusiastic that the select board would consider him for this position again.
And once again, that was a difficult appointment when we did that, and I have no problem appointing Mr. Mobilio to the seat. Dylan?
I have no problem. We have no other applicants, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I have no problem moving.
Then I'll look for a motion.
Make a motion, we appoint Tony Mobilio to the planning board alternate position till the end of this term.
I second that.
Motion is second to appoint Tony Mobilio to the planning board alternate seat. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Dylan Clark,
Irvin,
yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Moving right along brings us to our COVID update, Jessica.
I don't have a whole lot to update with. I think the news changes every single day. The CDC guidelines have changed recently. So if you are vaccinated, you can be in a private residence unmasked with other people. I think that's probably the most substantial policy change that we've seen. We see that, now that the CDC recommends it, not saying that people were not already doing it, which is probably the reason why we've had some COVID cases around the holidays, but at the local level, we are, again, another federal-local relationship. The Congress passed another stimulus package, and from the calculations that I've looked at, it looks like Barre will get $1.1 million in stimulus funds, which is a pretty impressive amount, and it looks like we will have a wider range of possibilities on how we can use this funding, and the funding is eligible to us from now, well, from when it's released and the guidance is released on it until 2024. So I think I'm waiting patiently for them to give me some guidance on what we can use that money for, so we can start planning, because that's a pretty significant amount of money.
It'd be interesting to see if some of those funds can be used towards getting our cable to those households that have not been serviced with kids at home from school and all that. And that would be certainly a welcome solution to one of our major problems here.
Yeah, I've heard everything from broadband infrastructure to water and sewer. I don't know, I think there's quite a range of possibilities here, so I'm just waiting for federal guidance to come out.
And this is supposed to be a stimulus, not just necessarily a CARES Act cover costs, but a stimulus to
Right,
to
so
boost something.
economic development is another thing that was pinpointed as a possibility to use the funds for. So I think it's gonna be a lot different than what we've seen with the CARES Act. And there's gonna be a lot more possibilities for us to be, we've been creative and efficient in using the CARES Act funds, but I think that this next phase will open us up into a wider range of possibilities.
Okay, thank you.
And the only other update as far as vaccines go is that we are still a regional site with Rutland. And you may have heard that there's going to be a clinic tomorrow at Quabbin Regional High School, and this is the reason why they're able to host it at the regional high school is based off of the state mandate that is trying to get vaccine clinics set up in every school. So I don't want anybody in town to hear about that clinic and ask why we aren't doing other clinics, but it is based off of a state guidance that we need to have a clinic for our educators to get vaccinated.
Going to make use of the tents for that, or?
It's all
Or
going
they
to
gotta do it
be
in
inside.
school?
It's all going to be in the cafeteria. This was really sprung on us like very last minute. I didn't know about it until the other day, and Chief Rogowski also didn't know that he was going to be running it either. So I think that that made possibly a slight slip in communication there, but.
Par for the course of the COVID vaccine so far. Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
That's about it.
Next item of agenda is the transfer station contract with Solid Waste Solutions.
So Andrea from the Board of Health and I went out to the transfer station and we looked at all of the equipment and property assets, which is, I just included that piece of the contract just because that was the only part of the contract that had substantially changed. So we added more details. We added a couple more items that were not previously listed on the asset list, and then we also noted which pieces of equipment were not being used. So those pieces of equipment, you'll see the word decommission next to it. Which segues into the next part of the conversation that's been questioned for a while, is what is the maintenance responsibility look like? And I included that language in the body of the email. I don't think I printed it out for myself, but I think that, yeah, I spoke with our attorney on the language here, and I really think that it comes down to the implementation of the contract. I mean, it says here, it can say whatever it says, but if there's nobody who is going after and making sure that the equipment is maintained properly, if there's, which this contract is executed by the Board of Health, so if, you know, if they're not going down there and overseeing the quality of the equipment and then approaching the operator on trying to fix the issues down there, then I think that comes down to just a failed implementation.
In these open top containers, 30 yard, I see 3 open. So I assume the 3 open top containers are the ones they used to use for trash collection and rotate that they've replaced with their packer.
Yes, yeah, so that is still our property, that they are housing in a different location, and that they currently, that they have their own compactors there now.
So they're using our equipment somewhere off-site?
They're not using it, it's just being housed off-site.
Strange, but okay. You guys have any other questions about this?
Yeah. Jessica,
Yes.
how many times has the Board of Health met in the last year?
Oh, that, I don't know off the top of my head. I know that it's been infrequent.
Do they have an inspection schedule for how many times or how often they've inspected this facility and the site and our equipment down there?
Not that I'm aware of.
This is our frustration before. This contract keeps going back to the Board of Health, but they seem to do very little with enforcing and maintaining and checking it off. We don't have a lot of choices, we know from before. This is their site to run unless we move the ownership of the site, which is documentation, insurance, and paperwork, and all sorts of stuff that goes with it. Should we ask the Board of Health to maybe consider some language where they do some sort of timely inspection of the property other than just at the initial time now, or?
When does this, is this a contract you're bidding, or is this just an extension, Jessica?
The contract, the contract was already bid for, and Solid Waste Solution was the only company that actually submitted a bid. They were not the only company that had expressed interest, that I had exchanged conversation with, but at the end of the day, they were the only ones that actually submitted a bid.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is I know we're having a lengthy discussion on the contract language, but how much do we have the right to actually change any of it or do anything other than just say, sounds good based on the bidding process we've already taken? And it sounds like having only one bidder, either we can go back out to bid or we just have to accept it based on the terms in which it was bid.
Fair enough?
I mean, is that an accurate assessment, Jessica?
Yeah, no, I think that you're right with that. I mean, we could go back out to bid, but, as I said, we had the pre-bidders conference. There were people who had expressed interest and had communicated with me. But at the end of the day, I can't ask someone to submit a bid or beg somebody to submit a bid. So, I mean, I was surprised at the end of the day, when we only got one. So.
Thank you.
And my concern was just more of if we can get the Board of Health to be a little more active in looking at it and, keeping up.
Yeah.
But I don't know, but that's up to them. We can only recommend. It's.
Right.
Thank you.
Which I think is when two boards work together on something really well, usually they can go really well, but it comes to that point where you say, well, how much can the Board of Selectmen tell another elected board?
We can't.
What to do, right?
We can't.
So that's where this kind of comes in, and we can't necessarily take this contract under our purview because a lot of these things require a health agent to be certified or somebody who's certified to look at these things. So I don't have those certifications, so I can't necessarily oversee those aspects of the contract.
No, we had this debate 3 years ago as to whether or not someone else should run the facility. It has to be overseen by the Board of Health. And our thought back then was that, I, of course, was trying to convince to have the DPW run it, which is not the way this went. But more so, we had a concern that they were the operator and the overseer. And there is no conflict because there's no profit in if anyone's doing this business, so there's no conflict that they oversee and run. But that was just a thought. It would be nice to have, if our board was responsible for the operation and that was delegated through, be it DPW or someone else, even if somebody's managing it, if we had our board being you and Sandy oversee and inspect the property, and then it's, the whole thing is overseen and looked at through a legal eye by the Board of Health to make sure it's in compliance, it just gets a separation. That's all we thought before. You have that separation of, we're responsible to keep it going, keep it up to snuff, and the Board of Health makes sure that we're keeping it up to snuff. It takes some of the burden off of them, and it also makes it easier for them to be a little more subjective, or objective, I should say, and say, hey, you're not doing that right, whereas it's easier when it's under their own to just go, well, it's good enough, But for now, this is how it is, and we're certainly not going to change anything like that at this point. And we didn't talk about it in the last 3 years to make any motions in it. But the absolute authority for the enforcement is the Board of Health. And for now, they are the operators of it as well. And we did have that discussion, lengthy discussions, Matt, right, 3 years ago about that.
So, just to clarify, and I don't know enough about the prior Board of Selectmen during the time that we acquired the transfer station from Waste Management. But at that time, that is when the Board of Health got registered with DEP as the owner of the transfer station. Officially, that should have been a decision either done by the town or the administrative office. The Board of Selectmen should have made a decision, voted on it, and assigned it to the Board of Health. I don't know how that happened, so historically, I don't know how they ended up as the owner on file. They don't need to be. It does happen in a few other communities, but most communities don't identify the Board of Health as their owner. the Board of Health has its role to regulate and make sure that the use of that land is in accordance with DEP regulations as well as any local bylaws we might have. But when it comes to contractual management of a contractor you're hiring to run the facility, I still don't understand any role why Board of Health is there. So if we want it changed, it's going to be something that I'm assuming the town can request via annual town meeting. If they want a different name on DEP and they want a different owner of the management of that transfer station to be the Board of Selectmen, partly because we're more visible, more accessible, and easier to call out if we're not doing something that they want, then the town could take those steps and make a request, bring it before the annual town meeting as a warrant and a request to have a bylaw written that says transfer station is owned and managed by the Board of Selectmen and it's regulated by appropriate Mass General Law authority by the Board of Health.
Agreed. And as for now, I think originally the ownership comes because part of the agreement with Waste Management running a landfill was they had to operate our transfer station. So I think we always owned it, and they just staffed it and operated it for us. And when they closed the gates at and capped the landfill, we already had ownership, but now we had to get a new management. And that's, since it was already owned by the Board of Health at that point, why they made the contract. But that gets everyone up to speed without getting further into it. We've had the discussion 3 years ago. This is why it's where it is now, and this is why this is a Board of Health's to sign off on and to go through with it and all. But Dylan, do you have anything to add or ask?
So, where do we go from here with this? What's the next step? What's the time frame on this? Do we have time to keep figuring this out, or are we going to be shooting ourselves in the foot if we don't move on this contract quickly?
The contract just has to be finalized prior to June 30th.
Right, and we're not going to re-advertise. The last time we did this, we only had the one company, the same company, put a bid in. The last time around, I think we put this to a vote for joint boards, selectmen and planning board for the authorization of the contract. So we can, we could be split 2-1, and they could be split on it, and that's going to approve or deny the contract. But we should take a vote on approving the contract, and then it goes to the Board of Health. And if the majority of the boards combined has a favorable vote on signing it, then it will be signed and entered. At least that's what we did 3 years ago.
I would make a motion that the Board of Selectmen approve the contract as written. If you want to take any further action down the road, you can, but I don't think you can make any headway in the current situation and the current contract the way it's written.
Agreed.
I'll second that motion then.
So a motion is second to approve this contract for the transfer station. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. So that has our approval. I assume the Board of Health will put their approval on it, and the contract will be signed. Approval of meeting minutes. I have executive session from February 16th. I have looked at those, and I'm okay with them. Have you guys read through those ones?
I have no questions.
Yep. Ditto.
Look for a motion on that.
I'll make a motion to approve the executive session meeting minutes for February 16th, 2021. After approval, they would not be ready for release.
I'll second that motion.
Motion is second to approve but not release executive session minutes, February 16th. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
And Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Then we have our meeting minutes from Monday, March 1st, open session.
I'd make a motion to accept the March 1st, 2021 Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
Also, I will second that with an amendment that March 1st be correctly spelled at the top of the page.
We can add an H in there, it wouldn't hurt anything, I'm sure. A motion, a second, to approve the meeting minutes for March 1st, assuming we correct the spelling of the month. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. We don't have any correspondence this week, is that correct?
Correct.
And selectmen reports, Dylan, Matt?
I won't have a selectman report this evening.
Okay, Dylan, Matt, sorry.
I'm gonna save mine up. And if you guys don't mind, you can tell me no if you want, but any of the things I've been thinking about, I'm trying to take some notes on, things that maybe I've talked about or I wasn't able to get the board. You know, we have many things to do, so it's not that people weren't willing. I just couldn't get the ball rolling on thoughts I had. At the next meeting, my last meeting for this term, I'd like to spend a little time just talking about some of those items, if you're okay with it.
I'm sure, we'll keep it reasonable, but yeah, you can, I would think probably 20 minutes or so should be enough for you, and we'll slot some time for it and discuss them, and I'd appreciate that, actually. Jessica, up to you. I'm not going to have anything for a report.
Great. I don't have a lot to report tonight. I know that recently I've been in part of a conversation with CMRPC. There's some interest to apply for a public health regionalization grant. And so we have had some preliminary conversations to talk about what a regional public health service would look like, whether that would be a regional agent, a regional nurse, regional just electric, or not electric, just regional inspection services. So I know that these are in their infancy right now, but they are conversations that I'm having. And I think that the grant would provide up to $300,000 in funding for 3 years, provided that there's a sustainable model that's presented in the application. I don't anticipate Barry being the lead applicant here, but we are in conversations with a handful of other towns to look at what might be in our best interests, and also how that would translate into being the best application for a grant.
Well, we do have at least shared inspectional services
Right.
already. So
Well, for the building inspector,
building inspector, I
Right.
believe, I don't know if the
this would be for like sewer.
electric and plumbing does more than that too, but more Board of Health stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, strictly, yeah, I accidentally said electric, but I meant plumbing, sewer, those kinds of services, which I don't believe are regional right now. But I know that Worcester, Matt, you could possibly speak on this, but Worcester has a regional public health model that's received some national recognition. And there's just some other regional models in the area that we could either latch onto, or we could potentially be a part of a new creation. So just wanted to let you all know that that's in the conversation stage.
And I do know, one thing I love to talk about is stuff I know from Groton, they have in the Neshoba Valley area for their main Board of Health, and they do have a health inspector that does a lot of the local towns and has office hours in their town. A big benefit to that is 7 days a week, so we're usually at least 5, I shouldn't say 7. You can call that central office and get someone and get something scheduled. So there's a benefit to having an accessibility to a regional office that we just don't necessarily get. When we have those inspectors out, so many hours a week, if that, or certain days only, it can be very difficult for people to line something up. So I think that type of service being regionalized for us would be a very good thing for the people to be able to have a better access to it, for that type of service.
And you know, we're here to talk about Barry's needs and what would be in the best interest of Barry, but Barry's actually in a better situation than a lot of our neighboring towns, and a lot of our neighboring towns have gone through significant hardships over the past year because of COVID and the stress that it's put on their public health resources, if they even had any. So I think that, you know, it would definitely benefit Barry, but it would also benefit some of our neighboring towns as well.
We have definitely been fortunate through this to this point. Very fortunate, I think.
It does a few things too, also, and I'll just throw it out here, I'm not saying this is exactly what Jessica was suggesting, but if we developed a kind of a regional, I don't want to use the word Board of Health, but Department of Public Health, because it's different between the elected officials versus the administrative officials that get hired to do the day-to-day. And I'm not sure how you would create a regional elected board that really works without it becoming a third-party district type, anonymous to any particular town. I don't know if that was, not anonymous, autonomous.
Autonomous, yeah.
The benefit though would be when we started these vaccination programs, if you were a regionalized kind of Board of Health or Department of Public Health, it's likely the state would have backed us quicker and sustained us longer with our own vaccination program. But because we weren't in a defined role that had an agreement with other towns that created the region they wanted to focus on, they kind of backed out of us, and then they just had us fall into Rutland's. And so if we did pursue something like this and it became Barry being somewhat of a center, kind of like we've been with some of our other regional agreements, it likely puts us in better standing with the state for future situations that may occur like this.
I agree, and it does put, as I said, the resources here for us. Something simple as a septic design plan that's got to be up if you have to locate it for a Title V. Someone needs to know where the D box is, where the tank is, and to be able to access those plans at a regional office any day of the week and not have to, time it right to catch the person on duty and in your town to get it. It does a lot for the public, more than people understand, I think. It really is an important aspect to have going, and I would certainly think we would hope to consider being the hub for that.
I think, the other piece of it is that inspectional services are kind of transactional where there's a fee associated with them, and so another part of this conversation that was brought up is that there's a lot of public health needs outside of an inspectional service or something that you can attach a fee to. So there's a lot of coming down the pipeline, food insecurity, mental health, just a lot of different public health issues that we can't attach a fee to if you're providing a service. So that's another aspect that a regional public health department could attack, is these social issues that affect people in their day-to-day lives, probably more than your Title V or sewer inspection would. So that's another thing that we've talked about too.
Much more encompassing then.
Yeah. Kind of the bigger picture of Worcester, where it's a Health and Human Services Department. It's not just the Department of Public Health. Department of Public Health is a part of Health and Human Services. So like you were mentioning, the mental health or some of the, obviously Worcester has a bigger issue with it, but homelessness or things like that still goes through the Department of Health and Human Services. It's just not necessarily under what would be kind of the Board of Health / Department of Public Health role. But as you bring it all together, that's where it all plays. There's many outreach opportunities that can come from an agreement like this.
All right. Anybody have anything else? Well, here we are at 7 o'clock, which I suspect is 8 o'clock. I look for the appropriate motion.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this evening.
I second that.
Motion is second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for vote. All those in favor?
Matt Urban, yes.
Dylan Clark, yes.
Greg O'Sullivan, yes. Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.
All right, thank you.